Well, I am joined from New Jersey by Michael Tracy, who has been on this show many times, um, who's just a terrible person. And I'm having him on to explain why he's chosen to be such a terrible person who defends the worst people and the worst actions imaginable. Michael Tracy has in the last, what is it, 6 weeks? That's just 6 weeks, right? You've been doing this thing
Well,
on Jeffrey Epstein?
okay, so I had intermittently followed
Sure. As we all have.
Epstein related developments since early 2015, if we want to go back to the beginning of my
Well,
awareness of
we
it.
all have, but you didn't do
Right,
that.
but
You
I've
didn't do
done
the
that. I've
real
been doing
research.
the absurd, maniacal deep dive since what was 4th of July weekend, so we're probably around 5 weeks.
So my guess is between 2015 and 6 weeks ago, you had more or less the same attitude about the Jeffrey Epstein case as I did, which is like we didn't really look into it seriously, but what we heard made me quite skeptical. And I'll just say this up front, and I think this should be, I think this is the first way to frame the question or the case about Epstein. How people should look at the case is the context should be the history of so-called sex trafficking allegations, right?
Or
Now, if you
child sex trafficking
and then
in particular.
especially, and then I would say,
That's a particularly resonant
and then I would say,
variation on the theme.
and then especially child sex trafficking. So if you look at the history of those allegations in this country, in the United States, I'm not talking about Thailand or India. Those are different categories. And I think it's much more real in those places. But in this country, when you look, and I invite everyone watching this, just Google it, go look at any list of cases, sex trafficking allegations and sex trafficking allegations in the United States in particular in the last, oh God, 30 years, you will find no real cases. I mean, I have not. Elizabeth Nolan Brown and I have gone over this, and she writes for this about Reason, and I have not been able to find a real case of actual sex trafficking in this country in the last several decades, where people have actually been coerced or defrauded, that's the definition of sex trafficking, into selling sex. And so
That's not
that,
really the definition of trafficking anymore. It's gotten so expansive that it
oh, sure.
encompasses a huge multitude of potential
Well,
circumstances,
the
at least in the
law,
popular nomenclature.
there is a law though, I think there is a law, which was actually established by Hillary
There
Clinton's.
is, but well,
Go
there
ahead.
there is a law, but my recollection is, and I looked at the statute recently. I can't quote it chapter and verse or verbatim at the moment, but I believe there have been amendments to the law to define as trafficking any sexual transport or transmittal of a minor for sexual activity, regardless if there's obvious coercion or proven coercion. So it's if it occurs to a minor at all, it can be considered trafficking
Okay, sure. Yeah. Um,
by the federal statute. I think I'd have to go double check the
so
exact
the
language.
words are in the statute: force, fraud, and coercion.
Here, I got it.
So if you use force, fraud, or coercion to
But I'm saying it's been amended recently.
to compel someone to sell sex, that's sex trafficking, which I'm okay with that definition. If you're saying it's been expanded recently, that was as of just a couple of years ago. I don't know, but that's a fine definition to me. I mean, force, fraud, and coercion, if you're yeah, if that happens to you and you're
Okay,
compelled.
so there's the force, fraud, and coercion element, but then they've added an additional subsection to the definition now, which
Oh,
is by any combination of, or if the person recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, or obtained had not attained the age of 14 years at the time of such offense, or oh, no, so sorry, let me. If the offense was not so affected, meaning by force, fraud, or coercion, and the person recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, or obtained had attained the age of 14 years but had not attained the age of 18 years at such time of the offense. So they're excluding the necessity of the force, fraud, or coercion now if the person had not attained the age of 18 years at the time of the offense.
Right. So if you talk a 14-year-old into having sex, that would be,
Or a 17-year-old.
or a 17-year-old. Right. Right. Which is, well, no, depending on the state.
Well, no, that's a federal. I just read you the federal statute.
Oh, gotcha. So one thing, I'm not even sure you know this, but a lot of people just don't know this, that in every southern state, in most red states, in most Republican states, the age of consent is 16. So
Well, not in
Alabama,
Florida.
not in Florida, but that's a purple state. But Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and then up through the western mountain Republican states, Idaho, it's all 16, and then other states are 17. Most
New
states,
York is 17, which was actually a complicating factor in terms of the attempt to re-prosecute Epstein
yeah,
federally in 2019
yeah,
because
liberal, yeah, liberal state, liberal democratic
and
states,
it's 17 in the United Kingdom as well, which is where some alleged offenses were
which
said
is
to have occurred.
relatively high, is my point. In Europe, the standard is 14, 15, 16. But anyway,
Now, I've never been an age of consent guy. Like, if you even mention that issue, people assume that you need to have your hard drive checked or that there's something suspicious as to why you're raising it. But
yes or
yes, I
no?
mean, it is relevant in terms of
Well, of course it's relevant.
prosecutors trying to marshal a case in which they claim that there was underage sex activity going on, and then that gets extrapolated by the public to indicate quote unquote pedophilia.
Right. And so we can say, and it's fine to say that it's like uncool or gross or immoral, even for a 50-something-year-old guy to be having sex with a 16-year-old. I'm fine with that. I find it pathetic and weird and gross and probably the sign of a emotionally immature man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. But it's legal. It's legal in most states and it's legal in most countries, and therefore we cannot simply consider it to be something that should be scandalous. Right? I mean, until we change the laws.
Well, you could consider it like morally scandalous, I guess, potentially,
Well,
but in
but
terms of legality, you
uh,
need to separate out that component,
sure.
which nobody really seems interested in doing.
Okay, so here's the nub of your argument. Not the nub, I think the thrust of it, which is that the claims, so there are many claims about Epstein, right? And I'd say there's two sets of claims, and I want to separate those two sets. So one set is about there having been a pedophile sex trafficking ring, which was also okay. And then there's the second claim, which is connected, which is that that sex trafficking pedophile ring was in the service of a blackmail operation run by some probably Israeli intelligence agency, most
See,
likely
I
the
don't think those
Mossad.
claims are separable or not
Okay,
as easily separable as you're trying to
well,
posit.
I'm going to do that.
Because,
We're
like,
gonna,
in the initial motion for joinder that Virginia Gouffre initially filed,
yeah,
or that rather Bradley Edwards and Paul Cassell filed on her behalf on
yeah.
December 30th, 2014, she alleged that the whole purpose, or she
Oh,
alleged that this underage or child sex trafficking operation was done in furtherance of obtaining blackmail material on the prominent individuals who were entrapped by it.
well,
So it was introduced as non-separable allegations.
so I would wonder then whether Virginia Juf is it, I think it's Giuffre, by the way. But
Whatever it
it doesn't
is.
matter. I would imagine I would wonder whether Virginia Giuffre had had any contact with Ryan Dawson or Whitney Webb at that point. Because where else would she get that idea that this was a Mossad operation? She was not.
She didn't allege Mossad specifically. She didn't allege in that motion for joinder that the blackmail was carried out at the behest of or direction of any particular intelligence agency, just that there was a blackmail operation.
Okay. So, but
I don't know who. I don't know if she was in contact with any of those people at that
so let
point.
me.
I
Okay.
tend to doubt it, but I don't know.
So let me, again, I want to separate these things just for the moment because I have, this is my intervention with you on this. And I've read all your stuff. You've written 3 or 4 articles on Substack about this and been on several podcasts. And
More than that at this point.
okay. Um, I've read a lot, heard a lot. Um, So I think there are I think they're distinct. How about distinct claims made, or different claims about this?
I don't really accept that they're distinct claims or that they're easily distinguishable claims. They seem to form the same ultimate claim.
Well, let me just tell you what I think.
Okay.
Okay. Which is that,
I mean, people can claim whatever they want, but in terms of like the genesis
sure,
of the theory, they are interwoven claims.
sure. Okay. Here's what I think. As to the claims about a pedophile sex trafficking ring operated by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, I think you have driven a truck right through it. I think that has been blown to smithereens, and there is no coming back from it unless there's some new evidence that's going to be revealed. It's just,
And I'd love to see any evidence that's
it's
available. Let's see
it's an
it. I'm not. I'm.
annihilation.
I'm. I'm pro
It's
disclosure. So let's just get
it's an
that established.
annihilation. I mean, there's no, to me, there's just zero. You've completely demolished that entire fantasy, which is really mostly what it was. Now,
In
on the
which case, Maxwell should probably be granted
free,
some kind of clemency, right?
and we're going to get to that. I want you to tell us why she has been railroaded and should be
Okay.
freed, because that's a big deal. She's looking at 20 years. Is that what she's doing?
Yeah, 20, and she's already been in prison for over 5.
Oh my God. Yeah, right. Okay. So, the number of people on sex charges in this country who are doing many, many years who are completely innocent is something that I want you to investigate. And I
And
got
often can't even extricate themselves once they've served their sentence. There was a New
right,
York Times article that was actually pretty good recently about
right.
this program, like a post incarceration program in New Jersey, where
Ankle
for some
bracelets.
reason, people who are convicted of sex offenses, even if they've served their initial sentence, are still required through some quirk of the law to remain in the carceral custody of the state, essentially.
Yeah,
Not even that they
forever.
have to register on the sex offender registry, but they
Yeah,
actually have to stay in state controlled housing.
yeah. Often forever for the rest of their lives, in fact. Yeah. So, okay. So I think that you have shown that there is absolutely zero, and I mean zero evidence that there was a pedophile sex trafficking ring operated by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And again, each word, pedophile, we're going to look at those, right? Pedophile has a specific meaning.
See,
Wasn't that?
people watching this, there's going to be people who are suspicious that you and I would even feel it was necessary to decipher or
I know,
dissect
I know.
the term pedophile. Like
If
that
you,
alone is seen as suspicious enough to discount everything that we say.
sure. So if you think a 17-year-old is the same as a 3-year-old, like, so here, fine, then you should think we're evil.
Yeah, then
But
turn
like,
off the podcast
so
right now.
you saw this case in Alabama a few weeks ago, right? These like 3 or 4 guys in Alabama, Bibb County, I think it was, who had like 10, I think, prepubescent children, some like 2 years old, 5 years old, who were chained up and drugged in a basement in a
I heard
under
about that. I didn't look into it in
under
great
a
depth.
barn, and they were renting them out. You could come and have sex with a 2-year-old in this underground bunker.
Well, I mean, let's maybe that's true. I genuinely don't know. I just don't. I mean,
I'm
I wouldn't accept. Look, whatever if the cops claim something or some prosecutor claims something, I think history has shown me, and my journalistic experience has shown me, we need to wait. We need
um
to look at it at least critically. It may be true. I don't know. I just saying I don't know at this moment.
For sure, but unlike the Epstein case, there I don't see any ulterior motives at play here. Like, there's no other reason for the cops to want
I
to
don't know.
say
I don't
this.
know what the political or social or religious dynamics are in Bibb County.
Sure, sure, sure,
So,
sure. I'm just saying, like, if that's at all true, that's pedophilia,
hey,
guys.
at
That's
least that's an allegation. At least that's an allegation of genuine pedophilic
pedophilia,
predation.
pederasty, child
Correct.
rape, child,
Correct.
all of it. Everything is true there. And that's what it looks like. That's what it is if you want it. So anyway, 16 and 17-year-old girls. And we don't even have, by the way, with Epstein, actual evidence, although you and I probably would think he probably did at some point have sex with a 17-year-old, but there is actually
He
no
pleaded guilty
evidence.
to that.
He to what? 17?
When he pleaded guilty to state level charges in Florida, after having been compelled to do so by the federal intercession in the state prosecution, the ultimate charges to which he pleaded guilty were procurement of prostitution and then procurement of a minor for prostitution. And the minor, who was seemingly identified as the individual that he procured for prostitution, although it actually is somewhat unclear in terms of how that plea was ultimately entered. But it seems like the most reasonable surmise, and this is what Dershowitz says, that he pleaded guilt, who was representing him at the time, that he pleaded guilty to procurement of a minor in relation to one 17-year-old who was actually nearly 18 at the time of the offense that he pleaded guilty to. And if you go and look at the grand jury transcripts from the local Florida prosecution that were only unsealed about a year ago in July of 2024, there is um, a woman who is at that point overage. I think she's about 19 or 20, who says that she consensually had sexual intercourse with Epstein literally the day before her 18th birthday. Now, is that true? Does she have the whole timeline 100% correct? I'm not sure, but it stands to reason that that is the person that is being referred to
Hmm.
by the state level charge
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
that in terms of him procuring a minor for prostitution. Because in Florida, a 17-year-old is a minor. The age of consent was 18.
Correct. But not if you could just drive across the border to Georgia, it won't be illegal. It won't be illegal anymore.
Possibly, ironically, when Epstein pleaded guilty, and after he served his sentence, his carceral sentence, and left the custody of the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in July of 2009, he then had to register as a sex offender in the various states in which he had properties or which he traveled to. And when he inquired with New Mexico, where he had a ranch, he
Hmm.
actually was not required, he found out, to register his movements as intensively as he would have in other states
Because
like
it's a
Florida or New York.
because it's a Republican state and they have lower age of consent laws in Republican states. This is the funniest thing about this. You
Well,
can
New
look at a
Mexico
map,
wasn't a Republican state at the time.
but historically, I mean, it's been mostly
Well,
Republican. I don't know, purple. I don't know.
voted for Obama in '08, voted for Kerry in
Okay.
'04, voted for I think it did vote for Bush in 2000 if I'm
I
not
might be wrong
mistaken, but
about that. I might be wrong
yeah.
about that. But if you could, everybody can look at a map of the age of consent laws, and you'll see that it's all red states that are 16. Um,
Not
and
anymore. Maybe historically.
what, New Mexico or age
Well,
of
in
consent?
terms of the red state blue state sort of dichotomy
No, it's
in terms
totally
of
true. No, you can look at it now. No, the whole Bible
all right.
Belt is all 16, amazingly. The Bible Belt, it's a belt across the deep South. It's all 16, whereas California is 18. Um, and by the way, not just 18, but they enforce it very strictly in California. They don't even allow for Romeo and Juliet exceptions where you're 19 and 17. They'll put you in jail if you're 19 having sex with a 17-year-old in California.
Well, Florida is considered like Republican
It's
ground
liberal.
zero these days, right? And the age of consent there is 18,
Okay. Anyway,
as it
again,
is in North Dakota, in Idaho, in Utah,
look at the deep
in
South.
Arizona, in
Look at the South.
Kentucky, in Tennessee. But you're right that the Bible, like the traditional deep South Bible belt, so Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, etc., it is on the lower end.
No, it's 16. Why don't you say it?
Yeah, it's 16.
Okay, so I mean, like again, the most conservative states have the lowest age of consent laws, which I think is just interesting and ironic. I don't think it's ironic and interesting. I think it's not surprising because most examples of, I think most cases of child molestation come out of which institutions? The church and the family, especially the
Right.
church.
So
So
if Epstein had if it was Palm Beach, Louisiana or something rather than Palm Beach, Florida, or if it was Palm
yeah,
Beach,
he'd be fine.
Montana,
He'd be fine.
how this whole thing transpired would have been much different.
That's exactly right. And we'd also find out why is it that liberals actually are much more they protect children from pedophiles much more strenuously than conservatives do, apparently. So anyway, but that's a side issue.
Yeah.
So listen, let's get into it. And
So
then I
you were
want
trying to separate the blackmail intelligence link or intelligence connection theory from the child sex trafficking theory. I
because I
sort of rejected that they're easily separable, but you're trying to like postulate some separability.
and I'm just saying what you've convinced me of. You've convinced
Okay.
me that there's zero evidence of any pedophile sex trafficking ring with Epstein, but you have not convinced me that there was no connection. Although I'm not saying you're trying to, but I have not been convinced that there's no connection between Epstein and I think in particular Israeli intelligence. Now,
Why is it my? Isn't the burden of proof on people who
yes,
assert
me.
that that's true?
Yeah,
Why
sure.
is the burden on me?
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not. I'm just saying. I
yeah.
came into your work
So
with
if everybody who tries to assert that that's true, and I'm um, persistently showing that the basis on which they make that claim has extreme evidentiary flaws,
yeah. Wait, what?
then shouldn't that tell you something? Look, I've never stated authoritatively that I know that there's been no connection, that there was no connection whatsoever between Epstein and Israeli intelligence or any other intelligence service. Go back to Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz had at one point in his career represented Mossad agents who had
I know.
who he had sought to extract from Cyprus.
I know. Okay.
And then Dershowitz represented Epstein. Is that an Israeli intelligence connection? I'm not that impressed by
Okay.
people who just assert a connection. Like if you're asserting that there's some connection, then okay, maybe there may well is a
Okay.
connection, but tell me what that's supposed to signify. Tell
Michael,
me what
let
what
me
inference I'm supposed to draw from that.
let me structure this interview.
Okay.
This is for your own good, by the way.
I know. You're probably right.
So I want to do one at a time. Okay. I get that there's many connections between the two
Where
claims,
there's smoke, there's fire, right?
but I know there's many connections between the two claims. I just want to do one at a time because I think that will
Okay,
be
let's do
very
it.
important and useful. Okay. So let's
I get a
demolish.
little bit animated on this, I guess,
I
because
get
last
it.
night, as I was telling you off air, every other person who came up to me at some event that I was at wanted to interrogate me about Epstein. So I've had to like rehearse my responses to various things.
I know. I know. I believe me. I understand. But I think it's important. So I do think you've. So there's the. Let's do the sex, the pedophile sex trafficking ring. Virginia Giuffre. It begins there. Giuffre. She killed herself recently. She's 41 years old. She was the one photographed, for those who don't know. I think she was 17 or 18 when she was photographed with Prince Andrew.
The
Armin,
claim is that she would have been 17. So that would have been in March of 2001 when that photograph was purportedly taken. I should mention that there's
right.
still some dispute as to the authenticity of the photograph, but we can just stipulate that it's authentic and agree for the time being
So
that she would have been 17 when it was purportedly taken.
arm in arm, side by side with Prince Andrew smiling. No, there's no photograph of anybody being naked or having sex or just, it could have been like a celebrity, selfie kind of
Well,
shoot.
the claim is that the photograph was taken in the upstairs portion of Ghislaine Maxwell's house in Belgravia, London. So they're standing outside what appears to be a bedroom area. And so people take that to mean that they're about to all head in together and have like some sexual romp or whatever.
It's kind of a big jump. I mean, how
Yeah.
many pictures have we seen of a 17-year-old girl like side by side, arm in arm with another person, right? It's a fairly standard
I
thing.
mean, there are people, I can't verify this. I'm not going to state this as fact, but there are people who swear that they know for sure that the photo was essentially a collage that was created by a professional
Hmm.
because like the proportionality of the photo they say is off, that the people couldn't have even fit in that narrow sort of corridor. There's a
Oh,
woman named Lady Victoria Harvey who had either dated or been like a social uh, associate of Prince Andrew decades ago, who actually posed as a buyer and went to that house and took like independent photographs of where that photo purportedly was taken. And she does make a case that's pretty interesting that the people couldn't have even fit in that area. But I don't know. I mean, I'm
well,
willing, but nonetheless,
I mean,
whether it's authentic or not, we can just stipulate that it's authentic for the purposes of this
right.
conversation.
Even if it's authentic, it
Right.
proves zero. Like it
Right.
doesn't even show anything. There's nothing about it. I
And she
mean,
would have been, I mean, and Virginia Gouffre, again, not to be an age of consent guy, which I genuinely am not under almost every other circumstance.
what does that mean?
She would have been above the legal age of consent in
Yes,
England at
that's
that time that the
important.
photo was taken.
That's important. I'm sorry, it's important. Again, you can think it's gross for Prince Andrew to have sex with a 17-year-old, but it's still legal. And so therefore, what do we want to do about it? Right? What do we want to but there's not even any evidence that she did have sex with Prince Andrew, except that there was a settlement. which is not evidence of anything, but
in which there
that's
was no culpability admitted by Andrew.
right. That's not evidence, but there is that, and that's what people latch onto, which I understand. I mean, if he's going to give her many millions of dollars to make this go away, how do you explain that,
Yeah,
Michael
which
Casey?
it didn't go away. How do I explain that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are some easily explicable explanations. Um, the royal family's finances are opaque, to say the least.
Mm.
So it's not even clear that Andrew himself was the one who could make the singular determination as to how to proceed with that lawsuit. He had been adamant that in denying that he actually ever had sex with Gouffre, and he had insisted that he would contest the claims. And the lawsuit was strategically filed at a strategic time by David Boies, who was representing Gouffre. It was after she had already received her cut of the Epstein victims compensation program settlements, which she could have received and likely did, up to $5 million alone. And then there were other settlement funds that were in the offing at the time from Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan, et cetera. She had already gotten a settlement from Maxwell,
Wow.
pursuant to her own individualized litigation with Maxwell.
Wow.
And she had gotten a settlement from Epstein personally for it was said around 500,000. So this was a wealthy woman living in luxury. People don't want to hear that. It's factually true. She had purchased, after the Andrews settlement, she purchased yet another luxurious palatial estate in Australia. She already had an oceanfront estate in Australia. So that's just true. But when she initiated the Andrew lawsuit in August of 2001, okay, so this claim was made. The photo with Andrew was published by the Daily Mail in 2011. The claim in the motion for joinder that Gouffre had been allegedly sex trafficked to Andrew was at the tail end of 2014. Only by 2021, August, that is, does she finally decide to bring the lawsuit against Andrew. So why the delay, right? Well,
Yeah.
there were some interesting things going on statutorily at the time,
Oh.
where after post Me Too, the New York State
Oh.
legislature, because this was
Oh.
filed in New York, decided that they were going to abolish the statute of limitations effectively
Oh.
for Me Too, for sexual misconduct related claims.
That's key.
And
I didn't catch that. That's key.
yeah, no, very few catch it.
Wow.
Lots of people don't catch lots of things related to this
Yeah. Well,
story.
no, but the liberal complicity in this. Like the liberal, not complicity. The
Enablement.
liberals, like
There's
they accept.
conservative. I know you'll be angry to hear it, but there's plenty of right wing and conservative complicity and enablement as well.
No. But I'm saying, oh,
Dufresne actually endorsed Trump in 2024.
no, but I'm saying the liberal Me Too movement
Yes,
established
yeah, it was critical. Yes,
what do you want to say? The cultural
legal sort of
context.
underpinnings. Yeah,
Yeah. And all, well, the cultural context.
yeah, legal and cultural context.
Yeah. For this and justification for the prosecution of it too. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, and some of the worst offenders are alt media personalities who are the most credulous of all about all manner
100%.
of this. You know,
You'll know these
um,
right wing Pepe the Frog podcast dudes are all talking like me
well, even
too.
like the generalized like
No, but
conspiracism
they're all
friendly,
talking
like
they're talking like Hollywood liberal feminists, talking about Me Too women and
exactly. They make
yeah, yeah.
they carve out this gigantic, random, unexplained exception where they're just going to buy in totally into, let's call it, the Me Too mentality with
Believe
respect
all
to
women.
anything that's connected in any possible way to Epstein and or Maxwell. And they'll
Believe.
just invite journalistic frauds on their program, like Jimmy
Yep.
Dore had on this guy Nick Bryant, who I've
Yes.
established is just a pure fraud. And I don't say that lightly. Like other people who I've criticized who are in this little cabal of like Epstein journalism experts, I don't know. I wouldn't go as far to say are a fraud, like Whitney Webb or Tara Palmieri or Julie K. Brown. They're not outright blatant frauds. They have big problems with their methodology in various respects. And I've shown that their journalistic credibility should be seriously questioned, despite them being touted on either the alt media podcast circuit or in the mainstream media as like the country's foremost experts journalistically on Epstein. But this guy, Nick Bryant, it's unbelievable. He's a legitimate fraud. He masquerades as a so-called investigative journalist. And he goes around to all these podcasts. He just makes stuff up almost every other sentence. He has this sham and Epstein Justice NGO that he set up, that he's the director for, the founder of, that solicits donations for God knows what.
I
I would
know.
love to see an annual report of what this entity actually does. And he just makes stuff up every other claim. Don't take my word for it on this podcast now if you're listening. Go to mtracy.net. There's at least 2 articles that I've now written that have to do with Nick Bryant, provably and demonstrably making stuff up almost every other sentence that he's brought when he's brought on these podcasts. But Jimmy Dore has him on his big Epstein expert, and now is like trolling me as somebody who's like, I guess,
Oh,
compromised by Israel, and so can't be even be listened to on any
oh
aspect
no.
of this. So, but Jimmy Dore isn't alone. He's like emblematic of like the total abolition of any standards in the alt media podcast sphere, which people increasingly rely on for credible information with respect to the story. So it's a scourge. And it's ironic because they're actually of one mind on this, basically, with the so-called reviled mainstream media, like CNN every night is like Epstein 20, Epstein Central. And you'd be hard pressed to find like a meaningful substantive distinction between their portrayal of what went on with the alt media podcast circuit. Although I guess the alt media podcast circuit would more emphasize or foreground the supposed like Mossad or Israeli intelligence connections that they've imagined.